We're live. Welcome back, everybody, to another AMA. We were just getting the Threadcast recorded. We were out of commission last week. Some scheduling conflicts. Hold on while I get this going. But we are back, and Mitch is traveling this week, so I am joined by Taster in booming audio form. Let's see here. Record. All right. Threadcast is being recorded. Get some announcements out. And if you're wondering, you already know if you're hearing me, but we are on YouTube Live, I think Facebook Live, but we are not on X Spaces. We've kind of ditched X Spaces for the time being. We will see about adding again, but it became like too difficult to do with, like if it was like a solo thing, easier, or if we only did X Spaces, it would be a lot easier. But because we're doing YouTube, it was always difficult to get, likes and video working on both simultaneously. So yeah, thanks, Brando, for Brando dropped the link. Thank you. I'm gonna get the Threadcast. How are you doing, Task?
Good. Just plugging along, using AI summaries. That's what I've been doing.
I also started using AI summaries.
Everybody should use AI summaries. It's very easy, very simple, and adds a lot of data. I was just mentioning to Cal before the show. It's done 1.21 million threads.
That's crazy. Yeah, I had no idea it had done that many.
That's a lot of data for Rafiki.
Yep, it is. Yeah, a little Rafiki update. We are hopefully in the final stages before we see the first iteration of Rafiki live on Threads. And the rollout plan, which I guess I don't think I've talked about publicly yet, but the rollout plan is to Rafiki on Threads first. So you'll be able to, call Rafiki inside of Threads. You guys saw like a very early kind of rough version of that, a few months ago. This Rafiki is completely, built from scratch. So it's very different than the other Rafiki. That'll be the initial rollout. And then we're going to roll out Rafiki in Discord. Discord will have its own version, essentially. Well, actually, really the same Rafiki, but obviously you've got one that's on chain, and then you've got one that's on Discord. And then from there, the plan is to actually build a kind of a ChatGPT like interface where you can talk to Rafiki directly, and you'll need to be premium to sign into that interface. So think of it like a ChatGPT premium. That's, if you want to use Rafiki, you gotta pay for access to the model, and you do so by being in Leo Premium. So that should add a lot of value to going premium, outside of all the other reasons to be premium. And I'm excited to see that. I think it's that model is working very well for like ChatGPT is ridiculously OpenAI is making a lot of money from their premium subscriptions, and I know X is as well. And then, by bringing this to InLeo Premium, I think we'll see a lot more people become premium who weren't already. I also think that the way Rafiki will work, I think there's plenty of people on Hive who pay for things like ChatGPT, or Grok or other things like that. And I think that we may be able to get some people who see, and we've talked about this before, but some people who see the value of paying for Leo AI and ditching things like ChatGPT because it's cheaper and offers you all the same benefits, but is actually better. So I think where a lot of these AI premium models are going is that people are going to look for more, and it's already happening. People are going to look for more niche, use cases. So, when you pay for an AI, like you're going to have like probably one generalized model you use, and then you're going to have a bunch of like niche ones that you use. And I kind of look at it like, video streaming services. Like most people have like Netflix, and then they also have some more niche ones like maybe Stars or like Paramount Plus or things like that. It's kind of like you have like a generalized streaming service for your main stuff, and then you've got all these niche ones that allow you to watch like very specific things. And I think AI is going to be very similar. You have like a generalized model you tap into, then you have very niche models that you also pay for. Um, and I think Rafiki will hit on this kind of more niche model in the market, where he can also do like very normal stuff like ChatGPT can, but he's going to be superior at like niche, very niche tasks. So obviously knowing things about your Hive content and your threads, your blogs, knowing things about your upvoting behavior and things like that on Inleo specifically. So having that kind of niche data set means that he'll be vastly superior to things like ChatGPT when it comes to doing specific tasks around your Hive, blogging activities, your earnings, your threads, etc. So like things like ChatGPT, like literally just can't compete with that. So that's where Rafiki's going to win, and I think we should lean in on that advantage and use it to grow Inleo Premium subscriptions, and I think it will. Another thing that we're working on for Rafiki, so I'm kind of going through the roadmap of it, but the other thing we're working on is actually a new For You feed, and I've been talking about this for like probably over a year. But Rafiki will actually replace the For You feed. So I don't think I've talked about this in a while, but it was long ago my idea that I wanted to run all threads through an AI model and then have each user of Inleo inside of that model, so that when a thread comes in, basically the AI asks itself, is this a good thread to feed to Wananda? Is this a good thread to feed to Lukil? Is this a good thread to feed to Taskmaster? And if it is a good thread to feed, like let's say it's a good thread to feed to Wananda, but it's not a good thread to feed to Taskmaster. Well, the For You feed for Wananda will then show that thread, and obviously it won't get shown to Taskmaster. And that will happen on every single thread that gets posted on the main feed. And that will ultimately become the For You feed. So Rafiki is obviously trained on all this information, and then every new thread that gets posted, Rafiki will also get trained on each new thread. So there's going to be like kind of one. You can think of it like one service inside of Rafiki, where every new thread that comes in is evaluated, and there's a table of all the different users, and it's going to be only for premium users. So there's like 130 premium users or something right now. So you'll have a table of all 130 premium users. Rafiki will ask itself, based on every new thread, which of these 130 users should I feed this thread to for the For You feed, and then that For You feed will get populated for each user, independently. Obviously, this costs, there's a compute cost to all of this, so you can't allow it to be free for everyone. But it will be a benefit of being premium, is you'll get like a very personalized For You feed. And when I say very personalized, I mean like extremely personalized. Like if you tend to, and it's going to be based on upvotes, content, how often you interact with a specific account, things like that. It's going to be extremely personalized, and it's probably going to be one of the best For You feeds out there. One of the unique reasons we can do this and other social media platforms struggle to do it is exactly what I said. It's very compute intensive. I actually heard a podcast where Elon was talking about adding this to X, and he was saying something about he estimated it would cost like 50,000 H100s in terms of ongoing compute in order to have that on X. And I would assume that's primarily for X premium users. So, obviously for us, the compute is a lot smaller. We only have 130 users that we need to compute this for, which actually, we kind of turn what would normally be a weakness, which is a small user base, into an advantage for us. Where if you only need to compute for 130 users, it's obviously significantly cheaper than computing for the the millions of people on X. So that is my big Rafiki update. It's been a long time since I talked about it.
What I want to add to that, there's a couple points that, as you were talking, that came to my mind. And the first thing is, um, you're right. The ability to run the compute based on small numbers, but there's a flip side to that is the ability to feed the vector database. Because when we go on X, when we go on Meta family of apps, if you go on Gemini, you feed stuff in, it updates it, but you're looking at a large pool of data coming through. With Rafiki, we have the ability to feed the data that gets put into the vector database that ends up training the next generations of Rafiki. And actually, not even the next generations, because Rafiki actually pulls from, or will pull from, the vector database, so it'll have up to the minute information or up to the hour information. So, once again, like I've been saying for 2 years, it's important to start feeding information in so that Rafiki has it. Because what's going to happen is Rafiki will come out and people will prompt stuff and say, well, it did give me the answer. Well, it doesn't have the information, the data, if you don't put it in there. So that's one thing. The second thing is that comes along with this is that customizable for you feed. To have that to be effective, you have to do stuff. If you show up once a day or twice a day and do 4 upvotes on threads or post 3 threads, it has no information to learn about what you like and what you're interested in. And so that's where getting active, putting up threads, talking about crypto, talking about your local neighborhood, talking about, the EPL, Major League Baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays, the NFL, whatever your interest is, politics, movies. That's why it's so important to engage in this stuff. Everybody complains about the training and all these companies taking your data. Well, first off, it's not your data if you're putting it on their platform. But second off, when you're on Leo, you're putting it on the Hive database. And what happens is you actually are training the AI model of what results it's going to spit out in the future. You're having an influence on it. You are creating an offspring or helping to create a collective offspring if you get involved. But once again, sitting back and doing nothing isn't the solution.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, the value, kind of like what I was saying too, that a weakness is actually a strength. Our small but niche and very motivated community. We all own Leo, so these things being successful impacts us all directly. What could be seen as a weakness that we're so small is actually a strength in some other ways. And training these AI models is one of those things. So, we obviously, we don't have millions of people that are all competing, and causing confusion to an AI model. We've got a very niche community and the ability to train an AI model from scratch, which we've all been doing for the past, several years with threads, because Rafiki's, trained all the way back in time on threads. So, every time you post a thread, every time you summarize a video, every time you share anything, Rafiki's getting trained and getting better. And then once Rafiki's live, anytime you engage with him, he'll also become better. Because if you say, well, let's say he says something about the Leo token that isn't right, well, then you can correct him. And then now when the next person asks, he'll know the answer to that question correctly. So we all have a role to play, in making these things better. And the ecosystem at large is just continuing to expand. So, between and I put up a thread a while back, a couple, I think probably like a month or two ago. Leo is really like the convergence of a lot of different big businesses. You've got like X obviously is one of them because of InLeo. You've got Binance because, obviously we're building LeoDex as the best DEX interface out there. And you've got essentially like a version of MicroStrategy through Leo Strategy. You've got RWAs, which wasn't even included in that thread because they didn't exist, and now they do. So we've just got this convergence of, and then you've got like OpenAI through Leo AI. So we've got this convergence of a lot of different businesses that are all converging on Leo, and each one, whether it generates $1 or $1 million in revenue each year, each one is generating revenue and net economic inflows for the Leo token. So that's why I kind of put out that updated vision or blog post about the Leo token economy and where I see things going, which is, we simply continue to build out these businesses, and each one is designed to create NEI, or net economic inflow. And you use NEI as the the KPI for the success of Leo, and just continue to build things that have inflows, and you just keep building. I think probably the most interesting era for building, thanks to AI, you're able to set up and build projects that you definitely couldn't build before, and then you're able to automate them in a way that wasn't possible before as well. So it's I wrote about this, I think about a week or two ago, that this is the most exciting time to build anything. There's so much access when it comes to technologies and automation, and then obviously these AI agents and whatnot. There's simply so much. There's an explosion in innovation that's happening across the board, and you're seeing what once required, a 10,000 employee company. Now you can build with one person and 100 AI agents. You can build the same company, and this explosion in innovation is something I want Leo to be kind of at the forefront of, in terms of capitalizing on it. So, like, for example, look at like BlackRock. Like they keep talking about tokenizing real world assets. Then look at like Leo strategy. BlackRock probably has 1,000+ employees currently right now working on RWAs. They're working on the compliance. They're working on the technology. They're working on the finances of it, all the different parts of it. And Leo strategy has what, maybe 3 people working on it, and they're able to build the same thing, maybe even better, because it's on chain and transparent. So, what once required you to have these massive companies, you can now build with a very small core team. And what I want to keep doing and see happening on Leo is not only the Leo team, but then you've got like the Leo strategy team, and hopefully some of you guys in the community, is you could just step up and build some crazy technology with AI. Find a way to attach a business model to it, which you can also ask AI to help you game theory out, and then make that business model accrete value to Leo. And you could imagine 1,000 businesses being built that all simply generate value and push it into Leo. And they make Leo kind of that pristine collateral that just absorbs all the net economic inflows. So that's kind of where my headspace is at. And you've probably seen it as we're able to build in a way that we never could build before. And I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I think if you just to talk about the monetary or the value aspect of things, I mean, let's just do, and I'll use some simple math numbers, but let's say Leo AI, we'll just say Rafiki, is worth $6 million, which is a nothing burger. I mean, $6 million for an AI isn't appearing anywhere, because you're looking at people projecting OpenAI, the next funding round or 2 funding rounds from now, they'll be valued at $1 trillion. So we're talking $6 million. That means at 30 million tokens, which we know are declining, that Leo, just from the Rafiki, has a value of 20 cents. Just from Rafiki. Nothing else. That's higher. That's about double where the token value is right now. And that's nothing. That's not even talking about LeoDex. That's not even talking about Leo strategy, real world assets. It's not talking about any of that. It's just talking about Rafiki. That's how small this is, with such a tight float and getting tighter with each time something is bridged across. You're looking at massive potential. And how much Leo do you need before you have what's considered life-changing money for wherever you are? And the other thing that I want to mention about the AI, I know Cal extended it out a little bit, but one of the drawbacks to these models is they are English-speaking U.S. Dominant, other than the Chinese models, which obviously are China's focused and Chinese dependent. You look at other areas of the world, Nigeria, India, Pakistan, that they are not well represented in these models simply because that information isn't on the internet to the same degree that it is with the English speaking Western developed world data. Well, guess what? You can feed Rafiki with information about Nigeria. You can feed Rafiki about information about India. You can feed Rafiki in languages that are native to those areas. You can start to feed the information in that makes Rafiki even more powerful for somebody in Nigeria than it might be in the United States. So this is just another pillar. I keep talking about the pillars in Leo, Rafiki, LeoDex. Now you got Leo strategy as a major pillar. And within all of those, there's different pillars within those that make them more valuable. And this is how, over time, where Cal talks about a 5 or 10 year horizon, not a 2 day horizon, this is where you start to get massive value because you get the flywheels going, where each flywheel becomes more and more valuable because they're starting to accelerate and compound each other.
Yeah, everything is very vertically integrated, and as you touched on a good point too, which is every time someone bridges across, the float is reduced, um, and that is like a permanent burn, obviously from Leo bridges every time someone bridges Leo. But then you've also got Leo strategy and the POL, which are both buying Leo and reducing the float as well. So they're reducing the float by perma-staking everything. Um, and what you're really seeing happening is there's 30 million Leo that exist. It's fully, fully distributed. There is no more Leo, from inflation. There's zero block rewards. So Leo is held by the users, and every day the amount of Leo that exists is decreasing from the bridge burns. And then also on top of that, you've got Leo decreasing in terms of circulation, in terms of what actually can be on the market through both Leo strategy and POL. So over time, you give this any amount of time, and over that period of time, the amount of Leo out there is significantly dropping. So right now, what is the active float of Leo? I mean, Leo strategy has what, 3.7 million. About 500,000 Leo has been burned by the bridges. So you're already at 29.5 million. So Leo strategy is at 3.7. POL is at like 500K, I think. So you've got essentially, what is that, 29 million minus, let's just call it 4 million. So you've got 25 million Leo that's out there, held by the users, and that doesn't include anyone who might have lost their keys, and the ongoing bridge burns, etc. So that amount of Leo in float just continues to go down. So I would say just put a very rough estimate around 25 million is the amount of Leo that's actually out there and could potentially hit the market. That obviously doesn't include any Leo I own or things like that where I'm not selling any Leo. So the float of Leo just continues to go down and down and down. Eventually, when it reaches say like 5 million Leo in float or 10 million even, what happens to the price? Well, the price becomes very sensitive to demand. So there's actually, if you can kind of picture in your head, there's a chart where there's two lines converging, which is ongoing demand and then available supply. And those lines kind of converge over time. And as the supply goes down, so the supply line is continuously decreasing, the demand line hopefully is continually increasing, right? So you've got like these converging lines. I don't know if I'm illustrating that very well, but you've got the supply continually decreasing, the demand continually increasing, and as the supply decreases, the inflows of demand have a larger and larger impact on price. So basically $100 buying Leo when there's a 25 million Leo float is a lot less effective than $100 buying Leo when there's a 10 million Leo float, for example. So as the float is reduced, even if demand stays the same, the price of Leo will go up. If you can have both effects, which is obviously what we're aiming for, where you've got the float getting reduced and then you've got the demand increasing, at the same time, then you've actually got a more effective demand coming into a ever decreasing supply. So economics 101, you know what happens after that.
Yeah, and that's simply how the another flywheel you can talk about. I mean, there's so many different ways to break down flywheels in the digital age. And again, you can apply this to the metas, you can apply it to the Googles, you can apply it to even breaking down to YouTube, because it's all the same thing. You're talking about a digital platform, then you're talking about the economic aspects or the financial aspects, which, for the most part, when you're talking Meta, when you're talking Google, you're talking the stocks. And there's a lot more that goes into them because obviously they're much bigger companies, and we know Google still their primary vehicle is still search. But you start to take this and you start to look at the financial aspect, and you say, okay, the token price is actually another flywheel, because as that starts to spin due to the tokenomics that Cal just mentioned, that generates interest, because then all of a sudden you have a chart out there that went from 1.5 cents to up to 25 cents, pull back to 10 cents, it goes up to, I don't know, let's make it up and say 40 cents. All of a sudden people and chartists and investors start to look at that. And that's another catch, because now you start to run to X, you start to run to Instagram, you start to run to Facebook, and you just put an image of the chart up there from, wherever. And that's something that people also can jump in on and say, well, wait a second, let me look at this thing, what's going on here. And then what Cal broke down in that thread that he put up about a month ago, well, an updated thread like that on the next post, where it talks about real world assets, it talks about social media, it talks about LeoDex. It just bullet points 4 or 5 different feeder systems and flywheels, plus has a chart of the token price. That's something that all of a sudden somebody who's looking at a decent sized trade or a decent investment. And when I talk that, I'm talking like maybe 10 grand. All of a sudden that just changes everything.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to move these flywheels, I think is kind of the tagline. There's so many different flywheels being built. And if you can imagine any sort of growth inside of those flywheels, then it's, meeting that decreasing supply, and we'll see how it all shakes out. I'm pretty excited about all of it. If we so I guess we have 2 different directions we can go. One is LeoDex, in terms of updates. The thing we're working on now is we're making UX improvements. So we've been just kind of collecting bugs and fixing them, and just focused on making the UX as great as possible. So no fancy new features right now. It's been just kind of like, ever since we rolled out perps, we've just been really focused on making the UX really good. So finding any UI bugs and just squashing them. We've fixed probably at least 50 in just these past few weeks. So we continue to find and fix things. We just added better error handling. So you might notice, like, if you do get an error, it should tell you more about why you're getting that error, and if it's something you can fix or if it's something you should report to LeoDex to fix. And then outside of that, we're working on the LeoDex landing page. So I've been kind of teasing. I've been throwing out some teaser screenshots of that. But the Leo ecosystem has. I don't think we've ever actually had and maybe in the very early days we had like a basic landing page, but we didn't have a landing page, or we haven't had a landing page for a very long time. So building a LeoDex landing page that kind of explains what LeoDex is, why people should use it, and all the good stuff behind that, which is, I think, really important, because the Dex interface space has gotten pretty crowded. So we need to talk about why LeoDex is better, why people might use it or like it, benefits them. And you'll notice with the designs, and I just dropped 2 screenshots that you guys can check out. But you'll notice with the designs that we've been very focused on, why does LeoDex make the user's life better? So I think that's like key marketing, right? Is like, why why should someone go through the hassle of learning this new DEX interface? Because they clearly are using a different interface if they're just discovering us. What makes it worthwhile for them to switch? So that's what the landing page is focused on. Is why does LeoDex make your life better? Why do you save money? Why is it faster? Things like that. So that's where the landing page is at. Hopefully, we'll kind of have that up in the next. I would say within the next 2 weeks. So while we continue to fix bugs, we're gonna begin working on refining the landing page and getting it ready to launch. It also talks about, and this will lead me into the next thing that we can chat about. It also talks about real world assets. So there's another I mentioned the convergence of supply and demand and how I think that's going to drive the Leo price. There's another convergence, in my opinion, that's happening with Leo strategy and LeoDex. So, Tass, if you want to talk about this for a little bit, I think it'd be a cool discussion. And I'm dropping a screenshot of the RWA section of the new landing page. LeoDex is aiming to build the best DEX interface, right? So when you trade crypto, we want you to think LeoDex. We want you to think that LeoDex has the best pricing. It's going to find you the fastest and best swap. It's got 6 different protocols integrated, and we'll continue to add more protocols over time, just with the sole desire of giving the user the best swap. And the best swap is defined as the fastest and best price. So you've got that happening with LeoDex, and then you've got Leo Strategy, which is now building real world assets like tokenized Tesla, and in the future, there will be more RWAs. And the cool convergence that's happening here is, as Leo Strategy rolls these out, tokenized Tesla being the first example, you can then immediately trade them on LeoDex. So that means that LeoDex effectively is or at least launching access to real world assets. So we put out a post, blog post that, and it was obviously, if you read the blog post, you'll see it was targeting, the wider crypto audience, not people in Leo who already know all of this stuff. But we essentially put out a blog post that said, LeoDex has partnered with Leo Strategy to bring you RWAs. That actually got reposted by Thorchain just yesterday. They featured that in their weekly ecosystem recap as the number one in Thorchain. So that's obviously exposure, because they talked about tokenized Tesla, they talked about RWAs, they talked about Leo Strategy, and they talked about LeoDex. So amazing exposure for the Leo ecosystem. And what you're seeing happening is you can zoom out. I would just say zoom out like a 10-year picture, and look at the possibility of hundreds of RWAs that are launched and managed by Leo Strategy, but available to trade on LeoDex. And trading them actually adds to LeoDex volume, and it also builds the Leo token, because each RWA is profitable for Leo Strategy, and they're using the profits to buy Leo. So you've now got this very synergistic relationship where LeoDex is benefiting from Leo Strategy having these products, and LeoDex is able to offer something that's unique to the marketplace. So, I mentioned, the landing page talks about, why should someone go through the hassle of switching to LeoDex? Well, 2 of the biggest things are going to be they can save time and they can save money, right? That's kind of what the landing page is focused on. That's what I think most users care about, is how do I save time and how do I save money? How do I trust? Trust is obviously kind of like the other big piece of that. And then another big piece that you can add to it is having access to things that are not available on other DEXs and other centralized exchanges. And that's where the RWAs come into play. So LeoDex can uniquely be the first to offer these RWAs from Leo Strategy to the broader marketplace, which then benefits both LeoDex in terms of getting users because they've got something unique to offer. It also benefits the Leo token because Leo benefits from trading volume on LeoDex. It also benefits from the RWAs getting usage and adoption. And then it also benefits Leo Strategy, where they're getting a wider audience for their RWAs, which means that they're selling more pre-sales. They're also earning more ongoing profits, and all of that profit is buying Leo. So again, feeding right back into Leo. So I think there's this huge synergy that we've kind of stumbled on. I don't think this was really planned, but as Leo Strategy started building out these RWAs in the Launchpad, it started to become very clear to me that there is this very synergistic convergence of LeoDex succeeding and Leo Strategy succeeding at the same time on something that grows both of them. And then obviously Leo being the thing that is the bedrock layer beneath both platforms. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that task, but I just have been kind of going down this rabbit hole of RWAs and thinking about how it benefits LeoDex, Leo Strategy, and the Leo token.
Well, without a doubt. I mean, it's when you start to look at market making, when you start to look at human trading, when you start to look at automated trading. There's a lot of things that can come into play, and it all adds volume. So having a DEX, and granted, other front ends will be able, other UIs will be able, I think, ultimately to tap into them, since it's on, if I'm not mistaken, on Maya. But I think the fact that you're looking at volume, you're looking at providing the marketplace with access, something outside of the Black Rocks and the centralized entities, which are going to AMA, they're going to KYC, they're going to AML you, and they have to adhere to that. Well, here's an opportunity in the decentralized world to offer this opportunity to people. And right now it's with Tesla. We'll see other real world assets. But again, just look at the scaling. What happens if you have 3, 4, 500 of these assets available on LeoDex? How much volume is required each and every day to trade them before you get significant volume? If you have a few hundred of them, I mean, you only need a few $1,000s per asset, and suddenly you're looking at 1.2, 1.3 million dollars just in that, forgetting all the other stuff. So there is a synergy that I don't think can be overlooked, and I think everything Leo Strategy does should be looked at with the mindset of how will this enhance LeoDex? Because if Leo Strategy is the financial layer of Leo, well, LeoDex is the trading layer of all these assets. So, before we go on, I think let's go through some of the comments and some of the questions so we don't forget them. Here's one. My computer, my screen has a smudge over it, so I can't read who wrote it, but probably an intelligent person. It said that taskmaster dude is a smart cat, probably the smartest one on the AMA. Sounds like intelligence. I wish I could make out the name. Lucio, question, and you may or may not know about this, Cal, so if you don't, then that's fine. With the upcoming hard fork, I presume she's talking Hive, there's a likelihood that many nodes might have started updating to the latest version to get ready for the hard fork. Therefore, might be some instability. Will this also affect operations here too? Do you have any insight into the hard fork, any technical preparation on the nodes, anything that you know about that?
Yeah, actually, one thing you guys probably noticed is we did like preemptive maintenance on the node. So we ended up having, while updating some stuff, we had an issue, and that caused, I think there was like probably 36 hours of downtime. Obviously, not ideal for Inleo specifically. So the we've already done a lot of the legwork for the hard fork in terms of our node. So we run a full Hive node, we run a full half node, and then we also, and half is HAF, not HALF. And then we also run a witness server, obviously in addition to a lot of other infrastructure. So we've already done a lot of legwork to prepare for this. I think we're going to be set, but with Hive hard forks, it's very hard to tell. So I've got people looking at it though, and I think we should be good. If anything, maybe a little bit of instability when the hard fork happens, but I think every UI is probably going to have some teething issues. So I would say relative to other interfaces, we're probably the most prepared from what I've seen. in terms of node versions. Like we're already running the latest versions, and we already updated all of our code and caught everything up. Um, so yeah, while we were in there, we made some nice improvements as well. So the Inleo interface should become a lot smoother in the coming days, because we've actually made some pretty significant improvements to the node, and it's not actually integrated yet. So right now we're using a public node for Inleo while we've been doing these updates. So you may have noticed some random issues on Inleo, and that's just because we're not using our own node yet, while we do this maintenance and upgrade. So when we switch back to the node, which could be, I think today, I was actually just talking to the devs right before we jumped on this. When we do switch to back to our own node, I think you'll notice a big improvement. So that is pretty much all the insight I have on the Hive hard fork. I honestly wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to what's in it, more just how does Inleo continue our operations, given the updates, especially because the updates were very half HAF focused, and we are heavy users of that. So if anything, the hard fork should be an improvement for us, because HAF got some improvements, that should hopefully make our node even better. So that's where that's at.
Excellent. Okay, Brando said building takes time, but staying consistent pays off. Crazy to think that 3 years ago Abe wasn't dominating DeFi. So that I agree with that. Luciel said feed Rafiki with adult threads, so we know where her mind is. But again, that is, and OpenAI is making news because they're going to get a little spicy. Of course, Elon made news where he has a mode where the XAI or Grok can be a smart ass, can be kinky, can be a whole bunch of vulgar. So I mean, yeah, you feed it what you want, and so if there's certain points of view or certain things you want expressed in there, adult content or otherwise, go right ahead. I mean, obviously you're talking about text, so you can't feed nude images in or anything like that. Sorry, Luciel, but you'll have to go to Facebook or something like that. Wananda, that sounds great. Building something that is relevant to people and adds to Leo's growth. Wananda asks, will Rafiki also be able to access private threads and sub-only long-form content?
That's a good question. Not currently. In theory, we could add that functionality later. If we did, we would need to have a way to segment that, because we don't. Essentially, if Rafiki is trained on something that's encrypted, like an encrypted creator subs post, you don't want someone else to be able to query Rafiki for that information. So I would say if we do add it, we'll have to have some sort of safeguards around that. But also, I don't think there's a whole lot of value in having the encrypted content fed to Rafiki. I think just the public content is plenty good enough. And the whole point of the encrypted content is that it gives you kind of like a private landscape to talk to your audience and potentially share private content, like releases that haven't happened yet and things like that. So I don't have a plan for Rafiki to be trained on it, but if we did, it would have some sort of safeguard.
All right, I put up a video. Interestingly, speaking of AI, it was from Y Combiner. The headline is "Big Companies Cannot Build AI." So it kind of, I didn't listen to the video since I'm on here, but it talks about basically, I guess, how the big companies struggle, and a lot of what you were saying before. There's going to be niches, there's going to be tentacles, and Leo AI isn't being designed to. Rafiki's not going to appeal to 100 million users, but we don't need it to appeal to 100 million users. One alpha posted a screenshot. I really can't see what it is, but he was asking when on something, so you can answer that. It's about a third of the way down, Cal.
Yeah, I am actually posting something. I saw that question. I just posted something in the Threadcast. So we need to make we've released a new Leo staking contract because we need to make some updates, or we already made the updates. So the new contract is live, um, and you're going to need to move your Leo. So this is not ideal, but you're going to need to move your Leo from the old S Leo contract to the new contract. And this will finally fix a lot of the issues we've been having in terms of the display, never showing the right amounts, people having trouble claiming because if the display is showing the wrong amount and then you try to claim a higher amount, that the contract just bounces it back and says reverted. So this we just essentially fixed a few things and then re-released the contract. It would have been ideal to be able to just update it, but obviously, if you know how smart contracts work, you can't just update smart contracts that are live. So we redeployed the contract, and then we made a UI that will handle the migration. So this is what we've been working on the back end. And I haven't really talked about it at all, just because I didn't want people to get too ahead of themselves. But you will be able to use this UI to essentially and you obviously can also do it on LeoDex, but this UI just makes it really easy. So I would recommend just using the UI when we release this, and it's just going to be like a web page that you can go to. But sometime probably in the next 48 to 72 hours, we're going to release this UI, and you'll go to it, you'll connect your wallet, and then you'll have to approve the new contract. You'll claim your rewards from the old contract, and then stake to the new SLEO contract. And then go to LeoDex, it'll just automatically populate everything for you, as if nothing changed. So kind of an annoying migration that needs to happen, but in order to fix a lot of these issues, we just had to rewrite some stuff in the contract. So we will have this live probably in the next definitely before the weekend. So just keep your eyes open for this. By the way, there's no rush to migrate, so please be careful and make sure you're doing everything right. And once the migration is ready, then you just migrate to the new contract, and then we'll restart, adding rewards to the new contract. So it'll make it a lot better. It'll finally fix a lot of these issues that I've wanted to fix. We were trying to hack the UI to, in terms of create workarounds, so that we didn't need to update the contract. And you guys have seen those workarounds, these constant updates, trying to tweak things to make the displays work correctly. It eventually just got to the point where it's not even worth trying to do this anymore, in terms of making the UI work with the old contract. So we just redeployed the contract, and we'll have a fresh, clean slate, once we can all migrate. So the migration UI will be live soon. It will be on the wleo.io interface. So that interface is a nice little lightweight place for us to do stuff like this with EVMs. So yeah, I will be putting out a lot of announcements. I will also do a video showing how to do the migration. But as you can see from the screenshot I posted, it's 4 buttons. You just click each button in succession, and then it all works. So I will post a video. The main blog account at Leo Finance will post a written blog post about it, and that'll obviously get pushed to LeoDex too. So hopefully that makes sense. I know that's not ideal, and I didn't really want to announce anything about it until we were 100% set on the solution, which is this.
Excellent. Lucio said, Tash, you should have skipped that about revealing that she desires to be an adult content for you. Let's see. Public content is good enough for Rafiki. Yes, Renanda. Good, fixing the issues. All right. One thing that we haven't discovered, and there was a blog post, and I'm sure you read it, and maybe have some views on it or some insights. I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing. I have skimmed it. But Leo Strategy put out a blog post announcing the end of the pre-sale. I'm reading the headline. TTSLA pre-sale ends Friday, November 7th. Last call. Do you have any words that you want to throw out on this? Any insight? Right now, or at the time of the writing, it was 42.2% sold out. Do you have some insight into behind it? What's going on? anything on the end of the pre-sale?
Yeah, I was reading through that blog post right before we jumped on. Also, so yeah, the pre-sale is like 42% sold out. I know we were kind of discussing some stuff. I was discussing stuff with Leo Strategy about how to proceed with all of this stuff. The tokenized Tesla pre-sale I think is a little bit slower going than expected. And that's not necessarily a horrible thing. It's just I think they maybe overshot with the perceived demand for Tesla stock exposure from the audience. That being said, I mean 42% sold out is not bad at all. So we've been seeing some movement on base. We saw some movement on base yesterday, actually, after that Thorchain tweet that I mentioned. So it's been cool to see some external people getting involved, some external wallets that aren't linked to anything else. So I think some new buyers. The kind of the reasoning behind the kind of cutoff date is I think there's a big education gap when it comes to tokenized Tesla. And Leo Strategy really kind of outlined this in their blog post, but I'll just give my perspective on it. There's a big education gap about tokenized Tesla and how the peg works. And I think that this is only something that you can really educate people on when it's live. So when they can actually see that it works in real time. I think getting it live sooner than later is generally going to be a positive thing for Leo Strategy's RWAs. So I think it's smart to put an end date on it. I still think there's a decent chance that tokenized Tesla sells out before Friday. It's been, I think, like 24 hours ago, there was like still less than 25% of the pre-sale sold. And now it's over 42%. So this pre-sale is pretty tiny to begin with. It's only 100K relative to Surge, which was, like 4 times larger. I still think there's a decent chance it'll sell out before Friday. But even if it doesn't, at least we know that by Friday it's going to be gone. So what that means is, and they talked about it in the blog post. So go read the blog post if you want all the details. But I'll just skim over some stuff. They mentioned a few things. So tokenized Tesla is already ready to launch. So they've made a few changes. And they've obviously gotten all the technology ready. So the daily yield is already live. Which means that they're already paying yield every day to all the TTSLA holders, which it's a benefit to them to get it live sooner because the profitability of tokenized Tesla comes from market making. Obviously, there's no market making to do when it's in pre-sale. So getting it live sooner is a benefit there. The market makers are obviously ready to go. They said the market makers are primed to go active the moment trading begins. The cross-chain pools are ready. So the base pools and then the Hive Engine pool, the Price Oracle and the Policy Engine are already live and publishing data on threads every hour. So you guys already see that with the @TTSLA.yield account. So that account is already posting every single hour with the deviation, the correlation between TTSLA and Tesla stock. So all of these things are already live. They're all ready to go. Really, the only thing waiting for tokenized Tesla to be live in the market is for the pre-sale to sell out. So the sooner it sells out, the better. And that's why this kind of time, this definitive end time was added. And I don't think that's a bad strategy, actually. It creates, because you could leave a pre-sale open, which is what they did with Surge, in perpetuity until it sells out. That could take a pretty long time because until it starts to get to the end, people just think that they have a lot of time to buy it. So with tokenized Tesla, I think it was smart to add an end date to it where, as it continues to approach, 50%, 60%, 70%, it'll sell out even faster when people know that it's going to end on this exact date and time. So basically, it's going to end on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern or sooner. Because if it sells out before then it's obviously gone sooner. And if it takes until then to sell out, then whatever's remaining will just get burned. So let's say that there's, the pre-sale was for 28,420 TTSLA. I forget how much is sold now, like 15,000 or something like that. So whatever is not sold out, let's just say like 20,000 of it sells out. The remaining 8,420 would get burned. That being said, I still think there's a pretty good chance it's all going to sell out. I still haven't finished buying. I plan to buy a lot more, and then I've been seeing others start to buy, especially with this announcement. I think it's starting to really pick up. Um, so I think it'll sell out, or at least get very close to it by Friday. So other than that, in that post, they talked about that. They talked about how there's 3 days left, obviously for Friday. Um, and then once it's live, I think it's going to be really important to see how well it performs, because this is going to give way to future RWAs, right? And it's like I said, if you zoom out 10 years, the vision is Leo Strategy is going to have hundreds of these RWAs, over the next decade plus, and each one is unique. Each one is profitable on its own, and it's profitable because of the market makers, and then they're also profitable to the whole stack. So they're each pre-sale buys Leo obviously in a large chunk, and then there's ongoing Leo getting bought using all the profits from the market making, not only for the RWA itself but also for the whole stack. And their post talked about this as well. But adding right now, there's 3 cross-chain market makers. There's a Leo market maker, there's a LSTR market maker, and there's a Surge market maker. When tokenized Tesla is done with the pre-sale, which now we know will be no later than Friday, when it's done with the pre-sale, there's going to be a 4th market maker. So there's going to be Leo, LSTR, Surge, and TTSLA. And then not only is there a 4th market maker generating profits, that market maker actually has a completely unique volatility profile, which means that it is injecting volatility into the other 3 assets, which will then bring even more market making activity across the whole stack. So not only will TTSLA be profitable, it'll be a new profit center. It should make the other arbitrage bots more profitable than they are already. And if that theory proves to be correct, and I think it will, then adding each successive RWA that Leo Strategy adds can be looked at as each new one is a profit center that gets added to the stack, and then it also is adding more profit to the stack itself. So it's got these like 2 core ways of driving profits, and that is completely aside from the fact that the pre-sale then leads to more Leo getting bought in larger chunks. So I think it's incredibly interesting. We really need to see TTSLA go live, and I think that's why this was done is to say let's get it live sooner, because I think the market needs to see how this works, because tokenized Tesla runs off of a peg policy as opposed to like a mint burn peg. So what that means is every week the yield policy gets set based on the correlation of tokenized Tesla to Tesla stock. And if that correlation deviates, then the yield goes up, and the yield is obviously paid daily. And that yield is meant to drive the peg. I think a lot of people are either confused about that or don't think it'll work. I think it's going to work magnificently. I think it's it's all theoretical until it's live. So once it's live, I think it'll prove to be a really good model for doing this, and it's gonna lay the groundwork for future RWAs. So if you look at it in that way, it's important for tokenized Tesla to go live soon, prove that it works, and then lay the foundation for future RWAs that use the exact same model, but then they model it for other assets. So you can imagine things like tokenized SpaceX stock, so they can even do private equities like SpaceX. You can imagine commodities like tokenized silver, tokenized gold. You can imagine, I mean, you can literally imagine any asset under the sun could be tokenized using this model, and then put on the blockchain and backed by Leo, and then all the profits are used to buy more Leo. And each one is I think each one has the potential to be extremely profitable, because if you look at tokenized Tesla, the base yield is 3%, right? So if there's $100,000 worth of tokenized Tesla out there, that means that there's $3,000 a year in yield that needs to be paid to all the TTSLA holders. Leo Strategy does not have any debt, but they do have dividend obligations, right? So the main risk of the fund are the dividend obligations. That being said, tokenized Tesla's dividend obligation at the baseline is $3,000 a year. So basically, if they launch this market maker and it makes anything more than $3,000 a year, it is immediately profitable. And any profits beyond $3,000 a year are then buying Leo, adding it to the balance sheet, which then further over collateralizes the TTSLA shares, which then leads to more people confident that they can buy it, which then leads to the market expanding. And then the market maker actually gets more and more profitable. So this thing is like a kind of like really like a perfectly scaling system where the bigger the market cap of the tokenized Tesla out there, the more the profits are for the market maker. And that's important because as the TTSLA market cap grows, the dividend obligations also grow. So you need the market maker to grow alongside everything else. And like I said, I think the interesting impact is that not only is the individual market maker, generating profits, it should, and this is obviously in theory until it's live, it should create more profits for the other three market makers. And then every time a successive asset is added to the stack, it adds more profit to all the assets that came before it. So we've already been seeing this, and I've been kind of tracking the data with Leo Strategy on the current market makers. This is already being seen on LSTR and Surge. So basically, when there was the Leo market maker, then the LSTR market maker got added. Or sorry, it was Leo, then Surge got added, then LSTR got added. And what we saw was every time a new asset got added, it not only created profits for that asset, it also created more arbitrage windows for the other two assets. So we'll see if this happens again with TTSLA. And since it has a trad violation because of the Tesla stock, I think it could add a completely different mix stack. And that's going to be interesting to watch. So long story short, getting it live soon is sooner is better, in my opinion. And I'm glad to see this change. And I think that there's a very high chance it sells out before Friday, but even if it doesn't, we know that it's going to be live Friday, and then we're going to have a fourth market maker live for Leo Strategy, and generating profits to buy more Leo. I don't know if I lost Task or if he's still here. Rhonda said, looking forward to reading the blog about migrating to the contract. Yeah, it'll be really easy to do. So like I said, I'll do a video on it, but it'll be easy to do. I guess after the TTSLA pre-sale sells out, the price will have to balance 1 to 100 TTSLA to Tesla. Yeah, this is actually another interesting thing they talked about in their blog post. Task DM'd me. My browser is freezing. Oh, got it. We'll see if he can get back in. Otherwise, I might just wrap it up. Thanks for coming back, Lukiel. Looking forward to buying more TTSLA before it sells out. Yeah, well, now we know it'll sell out by Friday, no matter what. So the question is, does it sell out sooner? Maybe. I don't know. I'm going to try to buy as soon as I can because I lost out on the LSTR and Surge pre-sales by not buying fast enough. Because once these things got past 50% sold out, they just accelerated. So we'll see. What I was saying about the PEG, though, they mentioned this in their blog post, which I found kind of interesting. The 60-day 2x yield boost is like this really interesting game theory, because if you think that after the pre-sale, tokenized Tesla might trade cheaper than the PEG, which is definitely possible because the pre-sale is obviously selling it at a discount. So there's going to be people who sell and flip it early. So if it trades at a discount, then the yield is going to be higher early. So basically the yield will be high early, and then it'll slowly go down over time as the PEG is reached. So if that happens, then anyone who bought the pre-sale is going to get an amplified yield. That is significantly higher than the standard yield of 3%. So, for example, in the post they talked about if let's just say the presale sells out and tokenized Tesla trades at the presale price, which is 20% discounted to where it should trade at the peg. Then that means the yield will actually be 20%. And you can refer to the docs if you want to see that data. So if the yield is 20%, then the 2x presale boost means that anyone who bought the presale is going to get 40% APR after the presale sells out. And the game theory with that is that if you buy in the presale, you're either going to win because you can flip for a higher price and sell your tokenized Tesla at a higher price per share, or you're going to win by just holding it and getting that 40% effective yield. So what they're trying to create is an environment where anyone who buys the presale, and I actually talked about this in the video I recorded yesterday, if you want to go watch it on the YouTube channel. I recorded a video specifically talking about Leo strategy, but the goal of Leo strategy is that anyone who buys any of the presales is wildly successful. You might not be successful the day after the presale, you might not be successful the week after, but the goal is that you are wildly successful because you bought the presale. And that is a kind of core component of Leo strategy, because they want you to continue to buy future presales, right? So they don't want you to get hurt by buying any of the presales. So having this 2x effective yield added is going to make things significantly better, in my opinion, because it's going to create this effect where, like I said, you're either going to win because you can, TTSLA is trading higher than the presale, which I think is very likely, or you're going to win from the higher effective yield, which is going to be like 40% or 30% or 20% right after the presale ends for 60 days. So you're going to win from either of those two or from both together. And that's going to be very interesting. The other aspect of the game theory, and I might leave you with this because I don't think Task is going to be able to make it back. I'm just looking through all of this. But the other aspect of the game theory is that you can choose to auto compound your yield of TTSLA back into more TTSLA. So if you just want ongoing, increasing Tesla exposure, which for example, I want, I plan to just leave my tokenized Tesla set to auto compounding for the foreseeable future, maybe a year or 2 years plus, because I just want more Tesla exposure. So by having a higher effective yield early after the presale ends, and then having people like me who want to auto compound, you actually have automatic buy pressure on tokenized Tesla from the auto compounding effect, because the yield that comes in as stablecoin, and then Leo strategy converts it to TTSLA on the market and then sends you the TTSLA to your wallet if you've chosen to auto compound. So that creates automatic buy pressure on tokenized Tesla. And since you've got that yield boost right after the presale ends, it actually creates a boosted buy pressure immediately after the presale. So very kind of interesting game theory that we're going to have to see how that plays out. But in my opinion, what's going to happen is the presale is going to sell out. Tokenized Tesla is going to trade somewhere between, the presale price and the peg price. It may take a week, it may take a month, or it may only take a day. It's impossible to know. For the tokenized Tesla price to go from the presale price to the peg price, and while you're waiting for that to happen, the yield is going to be boosted, which means that not only, if you're taking it as stable coins, you're just getting boosted yield, and that's great. Or if you're like me, you're taking it as auto compounded yield. You're actually buying cheaper TTSLA than the peg, and you're doing it at an increased APR, and you're also having the impact of supporting the TTSLA peg. So essentially look at it like a snowball, and anyone who's chosen to auto compound, that snowball is going to be, the size of the snowball is dictated by how deviated from the peg TTSLA is. The more deviated it is, the bigger the snowball, which means the faster it's going to reach its peg. So I continue to talk about these things like a rubber band, where as the price deviates to the downside, it actually builds pressure so that when it eventually magnetizes back to the peg, it happens even more quickly. So it is like a rubber band. The further you pull it back, the harder it'll push back to the peg. So hopefully that illustration kind of makes sense. And went on to said setting TTSLA yield to auto compound is a great idea. I agree. I think if you want Tesla exposure, I think TTSLA is a no-brainer. Obviously, there is a trust component, right? And there's a trust component to Leo strategy, which is why you're getting a, that's why LeoStrategy is selling you tokenized Tesla at a 20% discount for the pre-sale. And it's also why they're giving you a daily yield. It's because there's a trust component, and that trust needs to be priced in. So if you think of markets as I do in a perfectly efficient way, when there's an added risk to something, as there is with buying tokenized Tesla versus regular Tesla, there needs to be some sort of benefit for the person buying it, because the market is perfectly priced, right? So LeoStrategy has baked that in by having daily yield. Obviously, the fact that tokenized Tesla is on chain is also a benefit, and then it's also DeFi composable, so you'll be able to pool it, for example, on Base as TTSLA-USDC, and you'll be able to earn yield not only on your Tesla shares, your tokenized Tesla shares, but also on your LP position. And you'll be able to do the same thing on Hive Engine as well. So there's a lot of benefits to tokenized Tesla, and those benefits are necessary because they need to essentially close that gap on the market of like, well, why would I buy this and not just buy Tesla shares? So to close that gap, they need to have these benefits baked in. And I think they've done a really good job of building that. But like I said, until tokenized Tesla is live in the market and proves that LeoStrategy's RWA model works, I think a lot of people are going to have kind of this hanging question mark about whether it can work. Not only for tokenized Tesla, but for other tokenized RWAs in the future that are launched by LeoStrategy. So getting it live sooner is better. So we know for a fact now that it's going to be sold out by Friday. So if you want some, I would say get it sooner than later. It could sell out a lot sooner than Friday, but whether or not it does, it's going to be gone on Friday. So get in while you can, I guess is the tagline of that. I see Task is not going to make it back on stage. So I think we're good anyways. We've been live for an hour and 11 minutes. So my voice is gone. Thanks for coming to this AMA. I think Mitch will be back in town next Tuesday. Not sure if there's going to be a Lions Den this Friday. I can talk to Task and maybe I can join up with him and we can do something to talk about these things more. But thanks for coming, and I'll see you guys next week.